Hello, guys, and welcome to episode number 8 of the Heritage Agendas Football Podcast. It's been a long summer, but we are back for the 23-24 season. And just like we kicked off last season, we're starting this year with the Premier League predictions. Unfortunately, today it's just me. Abdi will be joining us again next week, but I kind of wanted to get this out there before the season started. And really see how this will compare to last season. Obviously, last season, a ton of surprises. Leicester City going down, Arsenal getting second place, and the big teams, Liverpool and Chelsea and even Tottenham, really struggled last season. So it's interesting to see how those teams will bounce back. It's been a crazy summer in terms of transfers. Even today, Moises Caicedo to Liverpool, £110 million. It's a Premier League record. Tyler Adams went to Chelsea as well today. It's been a crazy summer, and we're really excited for football and what it's going to bring. But without further ado, we're going to start our 23-24 Premier League predictions. And for us, for me, specifically at bottom, I have Sheffield United. The reason I have Sheffield United there is I think that they lost their best quality over the summer. Their best two players, in my opinion, Iliman Ndiaye and Sander Berge. They lost both of them. They really haven't spent yet. The notable signing for them has been Austin Trusty from Arsenal. 91 points last season in the championship, very commendable in the second place finish. But I think that the gap between the championship and the Premier League already as it is huge, and we've really seen championship clubs coming up that have to do on the Premier League have to really spend in the 60s to 70 millions. And not only have they not spent, but they've actually have negative spending this summer. And I think that the gap between them and the teams that are going to be even fighting for relegation or fighting to stay safe is huge. Of course, there's still 3 weeks left in the season, in the transfer window, and they have a chance to maybe bring in some quality. But as it stands right now, I think that they're head and shoulders below any of the other teams. 19th place after Sheffield, I have Luton. Luton, crazy. They have just a 60 million total squad value, which I thought was crazy when I was really researching each team for this video. Luton did a little bit better than Sheffield in terms of recruitment. They were able to bring in Tahith Chong from Birmingham and Ryan Giles from Wolves. The same problem with Luton as it is with Sheffield. I just don't think that they have the quality to really hold their own in the Premier League. I think that just the nature of their atmosphere and how excited their fan base is, and it's such a feel-good story. I think that it's going to be a very hard place to play, especially at certain moments of the season. And the way they play, really compact football, 5 at the back, usually 2 DMs sitting in front. They're definitely going to grind out some results. I just don't think it's going to be enough. And again, just in terms of quality, I don't think that there's really, these teams above them are not on the same playing field. And I think that over the course of a season is really what's going to set them apart. Next up, I have Nottingham Forest, a little bit of a surprise, going down in 18th. I think that once we get past those two teams, like I said, I think Forest I could really see anywhere in that 15 to 18 range. They were just 4 points off of relegation last season. They did a commendable job to survive. They brought in quality this summer. Chris Wood from Newcastle is a serious signing, as well as Anthony Elanga. Good to see him with a new home. They kept Brennan Johnson, which I think was really big. There was huge rumors of him going to Brentford for long periods of the summer. So that was big, and obviously still having Morgan Gibbs-White there, who's really the cornerstone of their team. It's huge. It's huge, and I think ultimately they're going to be fighting for that last spot of relegation. I just don't think that it'll be enough. I think maybe they'll get off slow, and I don't think their depth really compares with the rest of the teams we're going to talk about. 17th place. A lot of people have this team going down. I think that they're just too talented to do so. Wolves, I think it helps a lot that Lopetegui left before the season started. I think that type of atmosphere in the locker room would have really dragged the team down, and people joke about new manager bounce, but it is a thing, and I think that your start in the Premier League is absolutely huge. The way you start the season, if you start the season 3-4 losses in a row, it's extremely hard to bounce back. We see that every single year, especially with the teams vying in these relegation places. Even though they lost arguably their best player in Ruben Neves, also Nathan Collins is gone. and Raul Jimenez gone too, marking the end of an era. They were able to bring in Boubacar Traore and Mateus Cunha on that fee from Atletico Madrid, and they kept Mateus Nunes and they brought back Gonzalo Guedes on loan. I just think when you look at this team and you look at they still have this Portuguese backbone, but Sarabia, Fabio Silva back, Ignori, Pedro Neto, Mateus Nunes, these are just names that I think individual quality will win you games at some point in the Premier League. And even though I think that they're going to be in this position of kind of fighting for relegation versus staying up, I think that there'll be one or two games where the quality that they have is just better than the teams I've already listed, and I think that is really going to be the difference. Also, in terms of depth, I think they have way better depth than Nottingham Forest, and that's really the reason why I have them in 17th. Moving on to 16th, I have Sean Dyche and Everton. Everton last season really were in the thick of things the whole year. They were deep in the relegation zone at one point. I think they were 4 or 5 points back when they brought in Dyche. And then that Arsenal win kind of changed things. I think last season he had 3 wins, 3 draws, and 5 losses in his games, which was a 42-point pace, which would have been 8 points clear of relegation. And I can see them in that 4 to 5 points clear, just like Nottingham Forest was last year. Obviously, the recruitment this summer was pretty disappointing, to be honest. Only bringing in Ashley Young and Danjuma is disappointing, to say the least, especially for a team that's really been, fighting that relegation area. I think they were 17th and 16th back-to-back seasons, or in that region. And I think anytime you really play with that tightrope for a couple of seasons, the chances of them going down, I can see it 100%. I just think that I can see where the goals will come from this season. Calvert-Lewin, Danjuma, they have a great midfield, especially with Amadou Onana. I was surprised that there wasn't more interest in him this summer. Maybe that changes, but I think Dyche does just well enough where they feel comfortable for long points of the season, not like previous years. Moving up to 15th, I have AFC Bournemouth. Bournemouth have Abdoni Iraola. I watch a lot of Spanish football, so he took Rayo Vallecano from the Segunda into 12th place twice, and I think that he's a great manager and he really makes a name for himself this season. They brought in a bunch of names this summer: Traore, Kirkez, Favre, and Justin Kluivert from Valencia. They have, I think, the best squad, maybe outside of Wolves, from the teams I've listed so far. And I really think that they have a chance to turn some heads this season. Marco Senesi, Solanke, who's been really good in the Premier League, Dango Orata. I think that relegation really they don't think twice about relegation. I think that they'll be pretty comfortable the whole season, and I think maybe there's a chance for them to finish higher. Depends on really where these teams go, especially the team I'm about to talk about, which is Fulham. Fulham have a lot of questions for me. I really rate Marco Silva, and I love the things that they did in the Premier League last season. They really shot out of the gate with that draw opening week against Liverpool, and they really never looked back. There was never a point in the season where people thought that Fulham even had a chance of going down. I think at one point they were 5th or 6th. And the problem really with Fulham has just been transfers. Mitrovic obviously had that huge debacle with Saudi Arabia and wanting to leave there, I believe, for 50 million. They only brought in Raul Jimenez. We'll see if Mitrovic is on the way out. I don't think he's going to play another game for Fulham. I just think anytime you have something like that in the dressing room, it's really hard. Really hard to keep that there. And I think that ultimately the longer he stays at the club, the more he hurts the squad. João Palhinha, I'm surprised that he also hasn't had interest from the big clubs. It was a crazy signing when they got him last year, and he really showed his quality. Calvin Bassey from Ajax, very good player, and great signing. We'll see where they are. I could see them finishing a little lower. Bournemouth should be in 15th. Maybe they finish kind of in this 15th, 16th area, and Bournemouth, I don't want to take them over, or maybe even Everton, but I think that their second season back in the Premier League will not be nearly as good as their first season, and the main reason really is Alexander Mitrovic and the big questions surrounding him. Now, this is a team I am really excited to see this season, and that's Burnley and Vincent Kompany. Uh, Gone is the Burnley of the Dyche era with the Brexit football, the long balls to the two strikers. They play beautiful football, and I think that the biggest area where you see the type of football they are playing, is the name that they were brought in. Anytime you get Amdouni, for example, a player from Basel, for 20 million. They brought in Sander Berge, which is such a big signing. A great defensive midfielder, tall, strong, and you bring them in from the team that was challenging you the most in the championship last season. I think that's huge. And you bring in James Trafford, who's the England under-21 goalkeeper, and not on a loan deal, on a permanent deal. They play beautiful football. They're going to be a pleasure to watch this season, which is always good when you have a championship team that can come up and really entertain. And I think that the style of football that they play is going to be what ultimately attracts more and more high-quality names. Don't be surprised if in January there's a mid-table club going for a player and Burnley come and steal him away. I really don't think that's unrealistic. They also brought in Ramsey from Aston Villa this week. This is a team that I think at points will look like they might be able to finish in the top half. They play really, really beautiful football, as I said, and I think that they're going to settle in at this 11 to 13 range, but I could 100% see them finishing higher. I kind of have them at the low end of where I think that they could finish. Moving on now to 12th place. 12th place, I have West Ham. I'm surprised David Moyes is still the manager for them. I really thought that last year he should have ended his West Ham career by winning that European Championship. There's nothing like winning a trophy, no matter how many times people say top 4, top 6, top 7. There is nothing in football like winning a trophy, and you could really see that with the West Ham fans. To be champions of Europe with a club of that caliber is nothing short of exceptional. Their transfer window this summer has been pretty rough, especially for a European winner. They're probably going to lose 3 of their biggest players. The first one, who was already gone, in Declan Rice. The second one's Kamaka, who Abdi and I praised him all of last year before the season. I thought that was a fantastic signing. It just didn't work out. And the third one looks like it's going to be Lucas Paqueta, who's probably on his way out to Manchester City, 100 million euros plus. But 250 million euros from about 3 players. We'll see where they spend that money. They've already brought in Edson Alvarez from Ajax, which is a fantastic piece of business. Harry Maguire for 30 million, which obviously Maguire is always the recipient of a lot of memes, but he is a quality player, especially if you sit him in that central center back in a 3-back role. I think it's a lot different when you play for Manchester United. The spotlight is on you every week. You have to perform. And really, he has way like less of a role with the ball, which I think is where he really struggled at United, and something that you don't really see him doing at the England squad, which is why he's so much better for them, frankly. James Ward-Prowse, great piece of business to bring him in from Southampton, and maybe Scott McTominay, maybe another attacker. They have a lot in the war chest right now. They have a good squad with people like Said Benrahma. I haven't talked about Thomas Souček, Gerard Bowen. We'll really see where they can go. I think that if something is to hold them back, it will be David Moyes, surprisingly enough. I think that last season they were stretched thin with the European football and that cup run, and it's not going to be much easier this year. They have the Europa League, so this is the team that really, really needs to bring in reinforcements between now and the end of the window, and I think that they will. I think they have a lot of money in the bank, and I'm excited to see where they spend it. Moving on up to 11th. 11th is where I have Crystal Palace. Roy Hodgson comes back after Patrick Vieira leaves last season. They lose pretty much their best player ever. I think their best player ever in Zaha this summer. But they did not replace him. They brought in Franca from Flamengo, 19-year-old Brazilian. Really interested to see how he does in this league. And Jefferson Lerma from Bournemouth on a free, which was a great piece of business. And they have a great team. Anderson, Doucouré, Guehi, and if they can keep Michael Olise, who really looked like at one point he was going to either Chelsea or even Man City, and they kept Eze, there is no reason why this team cannot really fight for that mid-table spot. I don't think that that's far-fetched. And I think that they'll be pretty far away from the relegation zone, but they'll also be far away from European competition. Going into 10th. Surprise for some people, I have Brentford here and Thomas Frank's team. obviously the big questions with this team is Ivan Toney, who scored nearly 20 goals, I think 20 plus goals in the Premiership last season, and you lose that for, I believe, half the season. So the big thing for Brentford is going to be their start, because we know when their squad is fully healthy and everything is clicking, they have no problems even beating the biggest teams in the Premier League. I think losing Raya hurts to Arsenal, especially this late in the window. But I believe they did bring in a keeper from Freiburg, Flecken. Kevin Shade and Nathan Collins come in. Those are really good, really good signings. And Brentford's always been fantastic in terms of their recruitment. They use like a very analytical based system. I believe the same as one of the Dutch clubs. I think it's or Belgian clubs. I think it's Anderlecht. One of those clubs uses a very similar style. It's the same owners. I think that they play very great football, pressing high. They have a quality team within Wembo, and I'm curious to see where they finish. I think it's all about their start. Like I said, if they can start the Premier League and get maybe 20 points in the first 8-9 match days, which is crazy. It would be crazy. Maybe 9 to 11 match days. That would be crazy. And I think that if they can do that, maybe they can challenge for one of these higher spots. I think the Premier League is like the quality is so saturated this year. It's insane to see how many teams are really vying for European spots. I don't think that they're at that level yet. Maybe next season, a couple more signings and really having Tony back for the whole season. But I think that there will be points at the season where they are a nightmare matchup, especially for these bigger teams and the teams I'm yet to mention. Going into the number 9 spot, that's where I have Brighton. Obviously, we got the bombshell, not even, I think, an hour before recording this, that Moises Caicedo has left the club to Liverpool. £110 million, a record for the Premier League. Crazy fee. A lot of their squad got dismantled this summer, but they've replaced them very well, I will say. McAllister goes to Liverpool, also Caicedo, like I just said, and Sanchez, Robert Sanchez, their keeper. In their place, they bring in João Pedro, who I believe a club record signing, Igor, which I think was great business, Mahmoud Dawood and James Milner, kind of a different profile, more veteran experience in the midfield, and both of those combined for 12 million is fantastic. And there have been grumblings of them getting Mohamed Kudus, which is crazy from Ajax to get a player of that caliber, an international who did fantastic at the World Cup, who's maybe Ajax's best player. And obviously you keep Mitoma, Estupinan's still there, Evan Ferguson, De Zerbi stays another season, he plays. We talked about great football with company. De Zerbi arguably the best coach in terms of coaching up players under pressure this season. Crazy coach. And now they have hundreds of millions of pounds in the war chest, and we know how good Brighton spends. They just find on every corner of the world a player who plays out of this world in their system, and they flip him a couple years later. That is frankly their model of success, and it's working fantastic. I think if they can replace Caicedo appropriately, maybe they can push for higher spots. I think obviously the danger now is a lot of teams know how much money they have, so they're way more reluctant to sell them players at frankly how cheap they were getting. Obviously we're going to see maybe Enciso, how he can do this season, and as well as Billy Gilmore. Moving into 8th, this is where I have Tottenham. Obviously another piece of news is today we learned Harry Kane looks like it's a done deal to Bayern. I think that was the big question mark with Tottenham, and really why people were reluctant to put them into that top 6 mix. Now that we know he's practically gone, I think that this 8th spot is where they will settle in. Maybe they can push up to 7 or 6. I don't think that they have the squad to challenge them for top 4. The striker market is very dry. I think Richarlison now is going to be the main man, but you get a player like James Maddison, someone that Tottenham really haven't had since the likes of Christian Eriksen. And I think that's a fantastic piece of business, and I think that they don't have that high-profile type of manager anymore with Antonio Conte leaving. Postegalu, I think is his name, Ange Postegalu. I'm definitely butchering that. They bring him in from the Scottish League. I think that you get a coach like that who's going to play some good football, and the pressure is not going to be on him from the start. I think that this is one of the first seasons where the pressure really isn't on Tottenham to perform, and I think that makes a huge difference. But obviously this is a great squad. Heung-min Son, off season last year, but he's going to bounce back. They bring in Van de Ven, and they already have Christian Romero, Kulusevski, Richarlison, Destiny Udogie. We'll see how they do. But maybe more spending in the mix. But Tottenham right now, I think that they have a worse squad than the squads I'm going to mention, and I think they start a little slow without Kane. It's a huge adjustment. Number 7, maybe this is the first surprise from the top half teams. I have Newcastle United. Eddie Howe, fantastic job last year. 3rd place, one of the best, if not the best defense in the Premier League. Clean sheet after clean sheet after clean sheet. The big difference between last season and this season, I think, is the European football. I think when you can wait a full week and really instill your system, I think that's going to be something that helps Tottenham out, who we just talked about. When you can wait a full week and really have the whole week to prepare for an opponent, it's a huge difference. Playing in Europe, especially in the Champions League, and it's going to be their first campaign in that competition in probably 2 decades. The pressure to perform in every single game, especially the midweek ones. And really, they didn't reinforce their squad the way I thought that they would with the prospect of Champions League football. Obviously, they did a great job. Sandro Tonali is a crazy signing for a club of the caliber of Newcastle. Harvey Barnes, another great signing. Tino Livramento, great signing. They sold St. Maximin, which I can't lie surprised me. I think Anthony Gordon only gets better. And Miguel Almiron, obviously last season, crazy season, and they kept Bruno Guimaraes, and obviously Alexander Isak was doing great for them. But I think that their squad depth and just the fact that they have to really compete now in the Premier League, where teams will not take them as lightly, and when you get into the midweeks, they have to play in the Champions League against the best teams in the world. I think that when they get to that November, December, January, they're going to really start to slip up. And I think that maybe if they get eliminated from the Champions League a little early, maybe they can creep back into that Europa League, Champions League mix. But I think as things stand right now, this is where they finish in 7th. 6th place, a lot of people have been very high in this team. I have Unai Emery's Aston Villa. I think maybe outside of the clubs, from the clubs I've listed, maybe they've won the window. Anytime you can bring in Yuri Tielemans, Pau Torres, and Moussa Diaby to Aston Villa is crazy. It looks like they're going to keep Emi Martinez. They have quality at every single level of the pitch. That center back partnership of Diego Carlos and Pau Torres is right up there with some of the best partnerships in the Premier League. They have great depth with Tyrone Mings. Obviously, they too have European football with the Conference League. But I think the Conference League is way different than the Champions League and even the Europa League for Brighton, in the sense that you can kind of coast, but the travel is very difficult. There's a lot more travel involved usually in that competition. And I think that they're going to go very deep in that. Unai Emery has always been a fantastic cup manager. I think that it's going to be really a new experience for the squad and for the fan base, really competing deep into the season in multiple competitions. But I think that they've done a fantastic summer. They've done a fantastic job this summer in terms of bringing in names and really quality names that are going to help them right from the get-go. And I think that ultimately gets them into this Europa League 6th place. Now, the 5th place is very surprising. I have Manchester United. Manchester United, a lot of people have been even saying might compete for the Premiership this season. In terms of the recruitment this summer, big question marks. I think Rasmus Højlund is a great striker. 70 million is a lot for a 19-year-old player who's obviously United. It's a whole different stratosphere in terms of the pressure and what it takes to really perform and impress the fan base. He's going to be starting a ton of games. They're going to be expecting goals every game, especially if he starts well. Mason Mount comes in. I don't know how. I really am curious to gauge how that Mount, Bruno Fernandes, and Casemiro midfield works out. I think it's a little too attacking for me. Question marks on the right side. Who's gonna steal that role? Is it Anthony? Is it Jadon Sancho? Maybe we've been talking about a resurgence for him. And I just look at the recipe of success that they had last season. Obviously, they had that insane tear after the World Cup, where they won a bunch of games in a row. And they were doing great in the Europa League during that time too. Marcus Rashford was scoring every single game. and they still finished 4th. And there was points towards the end of the season where United fans were getting scared that they were going to bottle the top 4. I think that bringing in Andre Onana is huge for the way that Erik ten Hag likes to play. I think now they can, for the first time in his era, really play out from the back, play the type of football he likes to play. They can press a lot better. They still have question marks at right back. I'm really surprised that they didn't bring in a fullback, right or left, this summer. And they have question marks of where the goals are going to come from. Can Højlund really fill the shoes of having a number 9 that Manchester United have not had a dominant number 9 since maybe Robin van Persie? So it's been a while, and if that happens, maybe we can have a different conversation, and maybe Manchester United are not just challenging for Champions League and going deep in that competition, but challenging for the Premiership. Now we move into the top 4, and in my 4th spot, I have a team that, I can't even lie, has fully earned my respect in terms of their recruitment and what they're doing. At times, Chelsea looks like a dumpster fire where they're just buying left and right. Probably the craziest club I've seen in the last couple of years in terms of just how fast they get these deals done. It's literally like one day they're interested in the player, the next day deal done, like medical booked. They absolutely cleared their squad of every single person that wasn't in Mauricio Pochettino's plans. Kai Havertz, Mason Mount, Kovacic, Koulibaly, Pulisic, Edouard Mendy, N'Golo Kante, Azpilicueta, Aubameyang, and more names. And they have brought in tons of names this summer. Christopher Nkunku, obviously the big news is he's out for the next 3 to 4 months. That hurts a lot. Distasi, who they brought in because of the injury to Fofana. Nicholas Jackson, who's been doing fantastic in preseason. Robert Sanchez from Brighton. Levi Colwill, who you bring back on loan. And Malo Gusto, who comes in. He was pre-agreed from January. And the return of Ian Maatsen. I think that there's going to be growing pains for this Chelsea team. They're a young squad. I think that the Christopher Nkunku news is huge. At one point, I was thinking that maybe they finish even as high as 2nd. I think that the Nkunku news pushes them back just a little bit. And obviously missing out on Caicedo, which we just found about, also hurts. But they have a fantastic squad. If you just look at them from back to front, they have a full fielding of center backs who I really, really like. Badiashile, Axel Disasi, Ben Chilwell on the left. Obviously, left back is the biggest question now. And Malo Gusto or Reece James on the right. And that double pivot of Enzo Fernandez and Tyler Adams, or maybe if they go get Lavia. And that front 4 when Nkunku comes back will be Mudryk, Raheem Sterling on the right, maybe Michael Olise if they go back in for him, Christopher Nkunku, and Nicholas Jackson, who Jackson in preseason has been looking like the number 9 that Chelsea have been missing since the days of Diego Costa. Like, he's been fantastic, nothing short of it. And also Levi Colwill in the defense, who I forgot to mention. I think the big difference for Chelsea is just how much depth they have. They have a ridiculous amount of depth, and they have like a full 11 of young players who obviously they have the affiliate deal now with Strasbourg. They are littered with talent. I can really start to see this project coming together. I'm really, really curious to see where it goes from here, but I'm moved, frankly, by what they're doing, and I'm curious to see where it goes from here. Moving into the top 3, I have Liverpool. Liverpool, who I had actually 4th before the Caicedo signing, because huge questions at DM is no joke. Liverpool did a great job this summer in terms of really addressing their weaknesses. They bring in 3 new midfielders, so they're going to be having a whole new midfield trio. Szoboszlai, McAllister, Caicedo. Fantastic midfield. Really puts them back in the driver's seat in terms of how their squad ranks compared to their competitors. And Ibrahima Konate and Van Dijk, fantastic center back duo. Obviously the questions with Trent and Robertson, can they continue to give at the levels that they were when they were really competing for premierships and Champions League? Maybe. And people are forgetting about Luis Diaz, who really feels like a new signing. And you bring back Diogo Jota, who was injured for large periods of last year, and they were really trying to figure out how to play with Mohamed Salah and Darwin Núñez. So we'll see now, and Cody Gakpo too. So they have a lot of depth up front. They have a midfield trio who I think Liverpool fans can go to bed thinking, okay, they're in good hands in that area of the pitch, and a good defense. The question again is just how will injuries affect this squad? Can they really hit the ground running? That opening matchup against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, first weekend, is going to be a crazy game, and I cannot wait to see what happens. Ultimately, now we will see who wins and who gets second, and I really thought about this decision for a while. Here's who I have second. I have Arsenal in second. I thought really long and hard about them potentially winning the Premiership. Ultimately, here's why I don't think that they will. The goals. I just don't know where the goals are going to come from. Gabriel Jesus, Kai Havertz, Martinelli, Bukayo Saka, Martin Odegaard. Which one of those players would you confidently say will get you 20 league goals? Because at the end of the day, you will not win the Premier League if you do not have that 20 plus goal striker. And with Man City, there are no questions. Erling Haaland will get you 30 goals. We do not know who's going to get those goals for Arsenal. They're a fantastic squad. The recruitment this summer, 10 out of 10. Declan Rice, Kai Havertz, Jurriën Timber, David Raya. Those four names, fantastic piece of business. They got better in almost every phase of the pitch. Defensively, much better. In the midfield, better. Now they can have Thomas Partey and Declan Rice, and they have the return, obviously, of European football in the Champions League, which is going to be huge to see how they really stack up against the best teams in Europe. Each one of their players is getting a year older, which is great for their development. And they have more depth now. Leandro Trossard was great business, bringing him in from Brighton in the winter, and obviously the William Saliba return from injury, who a lot of Arsenal fans really cite for derailing their season last season when Saliba got hurt. The question marks again is just who can get the goals, and if one of the players between Gabriel Jesus, Kai Havertz, Martin Odegaard, Bukayo Saka, Gabriel Martinelli can get you those 20 league goals, I think we're having a completely different conversation in January, February, when we really start to get into the thick of things of who really is going to pull away from the Premier League title. And finally, Man City. Man City, I have them winning their fourth Premier League in a row. Treble winners last season. This summer, I think that before the signing of Paqueta, or it looks like it's close to happening, I think that you could argue that they were the only team that got worse from these top six right here. But if they get Paqueta, it's just unbelievable. Paqueta, Gvardiol, they're going to spend 200 million plus net. Pep Guardiola is bringing to a team now Erling Haaland, who's going to get you your 30 goals, and easily the best defense in Europe. Easily. Laporte, Ake, Gvardiol, Stones, Diaz, Walker, Cancelo, just crazy. Like, they have 6 or 7 center backs who would literally make it into almost any team in the world, maybe any team in the world. Ruben Diaz for me starts for any team in the world. John Stones is in that conversation. Gvardiol is in that conversation. And they are littered with depth at every single position. Calvin Phillips, Rodri, Kovacic, De Bruyne. Now you bring in Paqueta if he comes through. And on the wings you have Grealish, maybe Olise, Phil Foden. No more Mahrez, I think will hurt them. But Julian Alvarez and Erling Haaland. I just think that the quality of this team is just simply too good. I think the quality of this team is too good. If Arsenal can get that goal scorer, I think that that's the team that challenges them this season. Maybe Liverpool. The only problems with Liverpool is that their squad's a little too thin for my liking. After those three in midfield, there's a huge drop-off. Maybe Thiago Alcantara, but after those names, there's a huge drop-off in midfield. I think City is just a machine. They just churn out name after name after name. The problems with City will not be squad-wise. I think if City does not win the league, it'll be complacency. I think anytime you win a treble, especially in the dominating fashion that they did in the Champions League, at least that side, the Premier League, obviously they were fighting for till the end, you can have a sense of complacency. But I think that Pep Guardiola is the perfect manager to deal with that kind of thing. He will not settle for that type of complacency. He's always hungry, and he wants to set that record and be the first team in the Premier League era to win 4 premierships in a row. But that is my top 20, my Premier League predictions for 23-24. Really curious to see how it stacks up to what happens at the end of the season, as well as comparing it to last season. But On behalf of Heritage Agenda's Football Podcast, this has been Ibrahim, and this has been episode 8. Episode 9 next week should be back to normal with me and Abdi. But until then, take care of yourself, guys, and looking forward to a great season. Thank you.